Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm your host, Roy. Of course, we are the podcast that brings you a wide variety of topics from a diverse set of guests. We always are trying to find out those little missing pieces to help make us more successful. And also, we like to provide experts that can help you if you're bumping up against something that's holding you back. Definitely give you some things to think about or somebody to reach out to. Today, we're excited to have Kasey Compton with us. She is a determined entrepreneur who has successfully scaled 4 businesses past the multi-million dollar mark. She's designed her mental health practice, mindset behavioral group to be the recognizable, community-focused, and profitable, going from 0 to 3 million in less than 3 years with plans to dominate the world. I love that. She is on a mission to help business owners find the entrepreneurial confidence to design and live the life they've always wanted. Also, she is the author of Fix This Next. It's a book kind of geared at healthcare practitioners, if I'm not mistaken, that helps them to figure out they need or help them prioritize the needs of the business. So, Kasey, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we get too far into this, tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, I've read some other collateral and you've got a good story to tell. So, kind of tell us a little bit about that, how you ended up here.
Yeah, I think my story is very similar to a lot of other stories that I hear. It's kind of that. It sounds so cliche, but it's sort of like that rags to riches story. I started with basically nothing after a terrible relationship, and was working for a company and felt like I had no control over my future and the trajectory of my life that I was living. And so, after a pretty rough, high risk pregnancy that kept me on flat bed rest for about 5 months after I had my daughter, I just decided I was going to take things into my own hands. And I tell people that the only thing I could really afford, because we lost almost everything we had during that time, because I wasn't financially prepared for that kind of hit.
Right.
The only thing I could afford to do was think and check out library books. So that's what I did. I spent a lot of time thinking about business and how I wanted to start my own and what that was going to look like. And very soon after, that's what I did. And it just has taken off, and one thing has led to another. And I've found a lot of joy in creating and designing things from nothing into something that is helpful to people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love to hear those stories. And I do like the component about you had time to think and you had time to check out these books because I feel like education is very important. I believe even if you want to do a trade, the college experience is important, but there's also a lot of other ways to gain that education. You just have to like reach out and take the time. To me, that's the biggest part is a lot of great books, but trying to take that time to really do it, study it, and put it into play. It's difficult,
It
but
is. And I think people forget too that their community is so rich in opportunity. And aside from just reading, I would, every time I would speak to the bank, or the banker, or my CPA, or my accountant, or any kind of professional, I would ask questions and I would say, so if I were going to do this, what should I be doing now to prepare myself? And just really trying to build relationships so that I could hopefully leverage those relationships at some point down the road.
I was having a conversation with the gentleman over the weekend, and we kind of talked about that a little. That you'd be surprised how willing people are to help you out if you just ask the question. And I think
Right.
you have to be mindful of how you approach people, the relationship you have, and how you ask it. But so many times people will be glad to help you out, even sometimes even people that are in the same industry in the same town. A lot of times, what I always do, try to find somebody that's maybe a little geographically diverse than I am to reach out
Mhm.
to, but I've never been turned down. And
Mhm.
but I always try to have something to give back to them as well.
Right.
You just
Yeah.
can't put a price on that.
Right. Totally agree.
Yeah. So now you have a mental health practice, the mindset behavioral group. Is that correct?
Hmm.
And so you've been able to scale that. I mean, going from 3 years to multi-million dollars, that's really quite a feat.
Yeah, that's what I hear. And honestly, I didn't know that that was that big of a deal. um, I live in a very small town in South Central Kentucky, and so there's not a lot of other supportive industry people in my community that I could go to and say, because I would always wonder. I would say, wait, are we on track? Like, are we where we should be? Is this normal? I was just always trying to establish a baseline. How
Right.
much should I be making in this role? And nobody would tell me. I had no idea. And so for a couple of years, I just kept my head down and just focused on what I was doing and didn't even try anymore to look around and try to compare. Um, and it happened, I think, because I was able to find what worked on a smaller, more manageable scale and create systems to be able to sustain that when I was ready to scale it. And so that's really what I did in that whole first year was, let's just fine tune everything. Let's look at every single thing and ask ourselves, will this work if it's 100 times the size, or 10 times the size? And if it didn't work, then we wouldn't do it. We would change it. And so that's really what happened is just put all the time into developing the systems, and then when we were ready to really go for it, there was no capacity anymore. It was limitless
Right.
almost.
Right. Yeah, I think that you talk about an important part about developing systems, practices, procedures, not only, for the scaling portion, but I think this goes for uh, the business things as well, because a lot of times, once you start scaling and you get behind on the other systems that you have that you need to support this growth, it can be detrimental. And I hate to always bring this up, but it's a real problem is that I have seen some very successful marketing and salespeople that have gone out of business because they didn't have the support for the growth, and basically what it is, it's just word of mouth. You
Hmm.
went to their business, you didn't get good service, even if they have a good product or whatever, word of mouth through the community, and they're dead. And so I think it's important to build that base.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually so. You mentioned the book that I wrote, and that's one of the big components in that book is I believe that there are taken from Mike Michalowicz's original model called the business hierarchy of needs. I adapted it a little bit, but we believe that sales, your sales level of your business, which is your foundational level of your business, because without sales, you have no business. There are 5 core needs, and one of those core needs is delivering on commitments.
Right.
And that is where so many people miss the mark. They overpromise, underdeliver. They, without even realizing it, get a bad reputation. They can't do. They want to do what they say that they're going to do, but they can't. They don't have the infrastructure strong enough to support that. And I think that that's where most businesses start to fail, is right there at that level in sales.
Yeah. That, and the other thing is trust. I think that, and I'm not sure exactly, your model, but a lot of times it's the when we do decide that we want to grow, we have to have people around us that we trust, that we can leverage our time, because at some point we're just one person. There's 24 hours in a day, and we just can't touch and handle everything. So how big of a component has that been in you growing your business?
Huge. It's huge. It's actually the thing that I feel like it's our bottleneck all the time. It's the thing that slows our growth down. It's the thing that makes me question, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? I almost feel like, I've been burned a lot, and I've told some stories about those things because they're pretty bad. And it's all boiled down to trust, trusting the wrong people, giving them too much responsibility without enough accountability. And, so I really focus now on bringing people in, giving them responsibility, making sure that they're held accountable, and watching it while it cycles. And
Yeah.
then it gives me a better understanding of who I can trust and who I can't trust. Because I'm a very open person. I don't, like I'll tell anyone anything. It's not, that's just my nature. But that's come back to get me a few times.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's difficult, and that's something I talk about. I do a lot with employee retention, and we have a mindset, unfortunately, in this day and time, is that employee retention means that we have a pool table and we serve beer, or whatever
Hmm.
the gimmicks are on the back end. But one thing I feel, and I'll put this to you as a question, is it's hiring the right people on the front end, because if you make a bad hire, you can give them all the beer and barbecue and pool tables that they want. They can still be toxic. They can still not be getting the job done. And so, really, and which kind of ties into another point about our systems and procedures, is that if you want to build your business by scaling, you can't wake up on Monday and said, "Hey, I really want to scale. I need to start, or I'm scaling. I need to hire people." These are things that you really have to get out in front of and do in a good lead time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I wish it were just as easy as I'll just be honest, there's been times in my business when the demand was so strong that I have sacrificed what I really knew my business deserved as far as employees and people. I would find myself making excuses for certain applicants, like, well, they're not really what I'm looking for, but they'll probably be okay. And there's never been a time that has worked out positively for me.
Right.
It's always backfired. And then, I think that there's so many posts out there on LinkedIn and on social media that says, people don't leave bad, what is it? People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad managers, and
Right.
I hate that stuff because yeah, it's probably true, but it makes us that own these businesses feel like crap,
Yeah.
because there's sometimes that people are going to leave and it doesn't matter how great you are to
Right.
them,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter what you do to them, it's just not a good fit. So like knowing what your business is all about and knowing what the personality traits are that you are looking for, and the work ethic and the talents and the task, um it's huge. And I think it's something that takes a lot of practice. So people that don't do it a lot or aren't interested in it, I think it takes them a little longer to find those people that they really do trust.
Yeah, and I talk about marketing as a, you have to market for talent like you market for consumers. That it's sometimes we get put in a position, we have to put the Indeed ad out there and see what we get. I get that, but typically, we have a bunch of poor people to wade through, and then, like you said, we start making, it's like it's 11 o'clock at night and you're bleary eyed from looking through 300 resumes, and it's like, yeah, this guy here, that's when we tend to make the poor decisions. Where if we kind of get out there and market a little bit and talk to people, keep our eyes open when we're at other businesses, um, you can have people that actually want to come to work for you. And so you can have a choice. It's difficult. It takes some time. It takes some work, but the position that you're in, I think we've all been there before. It's like, we knew it was questionable, but we felt like we had to do it. We didn't have a choice. And then it takes us more time to unwind all the bad things that happen, and the other thing too, given the time to it. I've talked to people, this guy was in healthcare and he hired like 15 people in 1 month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got a part-time marketing person that when I have to replace this person, I mean, it takes 2-3 weeks, a lot of gruelingness. I mean, sometimes you get what you give, and you really have to put a lot of effort to making sure that it's the right person, the right fit, and that y'all, that you can get along.
Yeah, and thinking about cost, we talk about like customer acquisition costs all the time, but not a lot of people talk about employee acquisition cost. And I have a human resources person in my business, and that's what I talk to her about all the time, is like, look, yes, we can hire people, but it's almost like you're in Vegas, you're betting on this. Here, we've spent $2,000 already just to get this person in here. And if we get them in here and they're the wrong person, how much more money is that going to cost us? And then if they are toxic and they start spreading that bad apple seed across the company and five more leave, how much has that costed you? So it's just really, people are so unpredictable, and so it's hard. That's a hard component to manage.
Yeah, and in your business especially, because I've tell you, I've had a lot of professional practitioners that I love them and I hated to quit going to them, but the office staff and the people that surrounded them was it was insurmountable. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just too much. And finally, I had to make a decision to leave this person just because of that. So
Yeah.
it's an important component because you're not the only one that has contact with your consumers or your prospects. So again, it makes a lot of difference. And the cost of the acquisition, there are a lot of numbers out there, but I've seen some as high as even for a $10 an hour an employee, costing maybe up to $10,000. Now, I usually put that average around, 3,000, 5,000, maybe 750, 7,500. But it's a huge component, especially if you start turning over 10, 15, 20 people a year.
Yeah, and that's true, especially what you just said for my mental health practice. But I have other businesses too that are not mental health or not healthcare related whatsoever, and specifically my consulting business, where the face of that, the person that has the most communication and contact with my clients, if she sets a bad example, it looks poorly on me. So I have to really make sure, and I think people don't always realize that you can have systems in place to make sure that that experience and those experiences that your customers are having
Right.
are happy and pleasant. And it goes right back to that accountability piece. And so it's super important. We can't throw money at something and then walk away. If we're going to put money into it, we have to make sure that we're getting money out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good transition to, being in growth mode and scaling is, paying attention. And let's just go back to, you design a good plan, you've kind of tested it and life is good, but you can't just fling it out there and not pay attention. I mean, I'm sure that you still have to monitor that and you still probably have to make some little tweaks, even if you think you've got it 90% there.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it pressure testing. I don't know. Everyone calls it something different, but I like to set up the system, set up the system with a very high capacity and put it in as much of a controlled environment as I possibly can. So, for example, let's say we're testing out a new sales funnel, in the consulting business. If we have 10 other projects going on at that time, and we have leads coming in from 10 different places, it's very hard for me to really key in on how effective the sales funnel is I'm trying to test and the system that we're going to use. And so what I like to try to do is just like turn everything else off, or at least figure out how to keep it from muddying up the water here, and then really just test it slowly. Um, and then put some pressure on it and then see where it cracks and then go back in and modify before I really open up. And like, some people are putting ad budgets and everything into certain marketing strategies, and I'm not going to do that unless I know my system is working.
Right. Yeah, and I think that goes to a lot of areas of our business. It's like if something is not working, a lot of times we make five different changes, but we don't know, were those the right
Mhm.
changes? And I think that's a good thing is, we make one change at a time if possible, and then let's see what the result did that help. Because again, you could make five changes, but you never know which one of those had the effect, or one may have a negative offsetting the positive.
Right. Yeah, we think that whenever something is not working, that if we just throw more at it, it's going to fix it.
Right.
But I actually think it's the opposite. I think you got to start taking stuff away, stripping it down, and really being able to identify the problem. And but that's just our nature, is like wanting more. Let's do more. This isn't working, or not, I don't have enough money, let's do more of this, more of that, more of this. But I think we need to really start to look at like pulling back.
Right, right. Yeah, and an example I've used before is like Facebook ads. If I've talked to people before, it's like, yeah, I put $25 last week on a Facebook ad and I got nothing from it, and so now I'm switching over to Instagram, and then the next week it'll be switching over to LinkedIn. It's like you don't really take the time to evaluate not only the audience, the time, but or the amount of reach, all those different components, but also the longevity. And again, I'll let you speak to this, but I think that if you push out a marketing message or an ad and you get a huge response, then I consider you to be one of the lucky ones. That marketing, typically, it's just a grinding it out every day. It takes time. People need to see you, I don't know, 8 to 12 times before they want to really engage with you. It's not as simple as just, hey, I placed an ad out there and that's all I really need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the language is super important. I guess this is coming from the therapist in me. I haven't even seen clients in probably 3 or 4 years now. But, we can get people to do what we want them to do if we know how to speak their language.
Yeah.
And so many times I see people, they'll say, oh, let's say I ask them, well, have you tried Facebook ad? Yeah, I already tried it. It didn't work. Have you tried this? Yeah, I've already tried it. It didn't work. But they just like give up after that one thing, but they don't even consider the fact that maybe the language was wrong.
Right.
Maybe the audience, like you said, maybe the audience was wrong. People don't want to be necessarily sold to. I think people want to be understood. And if you can put your marketing message out there so that people see it and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, they get me, then that gets so much farther than some of the other stuff that's going on out there.
Yeah, and I'm a huge proponent of what I call the educational marketing. Is I don't want to just keep hammering you. Are you ready to buy yet? What do I need to do to make you buy it?
Hmm.
Like, take the time to educate. And like, even in email marketing, it's a good I one strategy I have is, if I see an article that may pertain to you, it's like I'll send you a copy of it and say, like, hey, I saw this article. Here are 3 good points. I thought that might interest you or be helpful to your business. And so, number one, if you have existing clients you do this with, it keeps this good relationship that you're interested in them and their success. But also with prospects, is they don't feel like they're just hammered. It's like you can show them the value of having you in their life and in their business.
Right. Yeah, totally. I'm 100% on board with that. I don't like people that just ask, 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 ask. It's a turn off.
Right, right. Well, so what are some other things that we need to think about, if we want to scale? Just some tips, tricks, some things that you've learned along the way. You've had great success with it.
Yeah, a few things that I would look at really before scaling specifically. Gosh, there's so many things, but one of the things I always like to do if I want to grow something, but I'm not sure when's the best time, or there's still some uncertainty, is first I just want to uncover and unpack. I always call it unpacking my kitchen. I just want to throw everything out of the cabinets and put it out on the floor and see what I have. So I want to know like everything that's going on in a particular system in the business. So like let's say it's leads. How are we collecting leads? I want to know like what are the different ways we're collecting leads? Who are the different people involved in the collection of leads? What do we do with the leads when we collect them? I just want to know all of that stuff. And then the next thing that I do is I just start streamlining it. So I ask myself, how many platforms do we have? There's technology has so many options
Right.
and they're great. But sometimes, if you're using QuickBooks for payments and Zapier for Zaps and a different CRM and Kajabi for your web host, like, and you're having to actually move through all those different platforms to just convert one lead, that's too many. So I want to know, how many platforms do I have? How many steps are in this process?
Yep.
And just start trying to clean it up as much as possibly can. And I usually shoot for about 50%. So I try to cut the steps down by 50%. What I found is that reduces error. The more steps, the more opportunity for error that you have within your system. Also, it just reduces, it makes it easier so that you can bring in people, whether it's assistants or virtual assistants or whatever they are, to help run the system for you. I think people often think that the people in their business are the ones that should bear the brunt of the work, but really the brunt of the work should be within the system.
Right.
And the last thing I do is just I automate. So that's when I bring in technology and say, hey, I'm manually having to send this email when this happens. Let's figure out a way to get that to happen automatically.
Yeah.
So just looking for ways to clean that up. And if you can just go through and identify each of the different systems in your business and do those 3 steps for, whenever you decide you want to scale and grow, then all you have to focus on is sales. You just have to focus on how I'm going to get more leads,
Yeah.
because everything else is going to take care of itself.
Yeah, and just kind of building on that, one thing I marked down here while you were talking was to, it's always good to look at things too from your consumer side, because
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, I've had some of those experiences where you go through this and then you finally ask the person, if you ever get to talk to somebody, it's like, have y'all ever really been through the customer journey? Because it's like, I don't know. My theory in life is never make it hard for people to give you money. And so when
Right.
we put when we put obstacles in their way to like just getting to where they need to sign up or get a call back, whatever it is, don't make it hard. There's got to be a way to simplify it. And I think that was something I've always heard about Steve Jobs, and what made the iPhone and the iPod so successful was he told his engineers, I want them to go from beginning to end in 3 steps, no more. And
Mm-hmm.
so, they worked really hard to, work on that process to cut it down to minimal needs to get from point A to point B.
I love that you noticed that, because I totally forgot to mention it. But that's what, whenever people come to me and they'll say, well, we have, 100 different systems in our business. Where should I start? And I always say you need, because we call most of ours clients. So I say you need to follow the client's journey. So what is the first point of contact that they have with your company, and what does that look like? What does that system look like? And then just work through that journey, and that's how you know where to start. So that's great. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about too is technology, is that, we have to, maybe not us individually, but we have to assign monitors for that, because I've got a good friend that's in marketing, and for some reason I went to her website one time, and it was the blue screen of death. I couldn't get there, or whatever. And I'm like, but that's something that we just never think about, is kind of like, once we set the system, we never really think about going through it to make sure all of these steps are working. So, yeah, technology is a great, as long as we, make it work for us instead of us
Right.
working for it.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, too. Let's talk about the book, and prioritizing the needs. What are some suggestions that you give people in the book?
Well, so in the book, I have what's called the healthcare hierarchy of needs. And it's basically, if anyone listening has ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's very similar to that. It's a triangle, and it's divided into 3 sections. The on the base is sales, in the middle is profit, and in the very tip top is order. And so what I tell people to do is ask themselves the 5 questions in each of the core levels, starting with sales. And if they answer no to any of the questions that are directly related to the core needs of their business, then that is where they start. So you're always going to start on the lowest level of an identified need. So, for example, I'll just give you an example. So maybe those people who aren't as visual and more auditory can understand. In the base level of sales, these are the 5 core needs that we believe all businesses should have. So the first one is lifestyle congruence. We need to know what our business needs to make in order to I don't know, supply us with the lifestyle that we want to have. So we need to know how much money. We need to
Right.
know the numbers. The second thing is just the prospect attraction. So, are we attracting enough of the right kinds of clients to meet that level of need?
Right.
And then from there, it's client conversion. So, are we converting enough of those people that we are attracting? And then we get to delivering on commitments, which is basically, are you doing everything that you say you're going to do? And then the last one is collecting on commitments. Are you able to collect on those transactions? And so if you were to answer a no, that you could not do that to any one of those questions, the one that was the lowest level, that would be your starting point. Because we think about like treating our business like we treat our patients and mental health. If you came to me and you said, Kasey, I'm having panic attacks 5 to 6 times a day. I feel like I'm floating. I am just anxious. I'm not going to look at you and say, okay, let me just teach you how to breathe. No, I need to get to the core. Like what is the reason you're having these panic attacks, and let's treat that. And so this framework here that we've created is really based on like, let's always go after the core rather than treating the symptoms of the core.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I find that in a lot of businesses is like something's not working right. And so we try to implement these other things to offset that. And then next thing you know, you've got 10 processes that really go back to the original thing, just not working like it
Right.
should.
Mm-hmm.
It's, uh, again, that's, these are the good reasons that we need to really look at our situations and our systems and processes, pretty regularly. Not Things change too. I guess that's another point, is that we always want to stay on top and stay out front. We never want to wait till things get so bad that we're, way far behind in any of those things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, anything else that you want to talk about, excuse me, on the book?
Um, Not really. I don't know when you will air this episode. The book comes out July 19th.
Okay.
It's available right now on Amazon. It has been for a while for pre-order. We're really excited about it. It's different. It's obviously it's a business book, but it's also full of a lot of story. I really wanted to write something that wasn't boring and that
Right.
people actually wanted to read. So it's a good little mix of, here's what I'm trying to teach you. Here's a good story to emphasize my point. Here's what you need to go do
Yeah.
it.
And I worked in a portion of the healthcare as consulting for quite a few years, and I think a couple things to mention maybe is, and I'll let you weigh in, is that people get into like healthcare professions because they're usually caregivers and they are good with the service that they provide and all that. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're good business people.
Right.
So, one thing, it's we can't let our egos get in the way and say, well, I'm the business owner, so I have to make all the decisions or I have to do all the jobs. And the great thing about the day and time that we live in is we can find fractional help or get consultants to come in and help us, kind of push to get over the hills. So,
Mhm.
it's not a reflection of weakness or not being able to, not knowing something, just to reach out and ask for some help.
Yeah, yeah. I think we think that we should do it all, or we're like the bootstrap kings and queens of America, and that's not always good. And I've done it. I mean, I'm like very stubborn. I will figure it out myself. Just let
Right.
me do it myself. But when you want to scale and grow, you have to relinquish that control, because it will not happen. And if it does happen, you're going to be miserable in the process.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the bottom line too. We all want to be happy. We want, we get into business because, we probably want to make a little more money. We want to have that time to enjoy it. And so we can't let ourselves get into this position where, the business is running us instead of us running
Right.
the business. And
Yeah.
I think that's a good component that, definitely check out the fix this next, the prioritizing the needs of business, especially, and it's geared more to the healthcare audience, correct?
It is. And
Okay.
there, Mike Michalowicz wrote the book Fix This Next that is geared for all business owners. But really, the interventions that we teach in both of these books apply for every type of business.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Well, Kasey, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. We certainly do appreciate it. Before we get away, a couple questions. First off, what is a tool or a habit, something that you use in your daily life that really adds a lot of value? It can be professional or personal, either one.
Um, I like to have daily writing routines. So every single day at 10 o'clock for an hour is when I just sit down and I block everything else out and I focus on writing. It doesn't matter what kind of writing it is, but something. And it just kind of keeps me clear headed and focused.
Okay, awesome. All right. So tell people first off, how can they reach out, or well, who do you like to work with? How can
Mhm.
you help them? And of course, how can they reach out and get a hold of you? And then just run through the book one more time before we get
Sure.
away.
Yeah, so we work with overworked, overextended business owners who are wanting more, but they don't really want to sacrifice any more time to get it. It is not industry specific. We work with everyone from, hair salon owners to commercial property real estate, mental health, and the whole 9 yards. The best way to get a hold of me is either through social media, Instagram or Facebook, or our website is just kaseycompton.com. um, if you follow us on social media, you'll see all of the promos for the books. You'll see all the information about the book. It's also on our website. We do have, it's called a FTN Quick Start. It's a free thing that you can opt into on our website, that you get all the behind the scenes information, the interviews from the book. You get all of the lost content, all of the content that didn't make it into the book. And then we also take you through the whole entire process through an audio video version of the book if people aren't readers.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So y'all reach out, get Kasey to see what she can do to help you out, help you scale and get things under control and moving in your direction. We will also include all that information in the show notes as well. So, again, thanks for your time. That's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. Of course, I am your host, Roy. You can find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We're on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. I'd be glad to get it added for you. We're on all the major social media platforms. Probably hang out a little bit more on Instagram. If you want to reach out there, we'd be glad to interact with you. And a video of this interview will go up when the episode goes live as well. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your business.